Welcome to Endure to the End. I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Josh. We talk about faith, marriage, and the endurance it takes to stay grounded through life's challenges in this modern day from an LDS point of view.
We're here to discuss doctrinal topics through real stories, conversations, and the hope we find along the way as we learn to endure to the end.
Let's get into it.
Okay, we are back in action. It's been a hot minute since we've recorded. This feels kind of crazy, but I'm excited. How are you feeling?
Feeling tired.
Yeah.
Feeling tired, but I'm excited.
Yeah.
There's been a lot that's happened, and we're both a little under the weather at the moment.
Yeah, we have kind of pushed out recording and starting this. And so even though we've been a little bit sick, I just told Josh we got to send it. So our voices might sound a little bit off since we've had kind of a cold, but we're excited for a new chapter, a new era. You guys can probably tell that Josh shaved his head if you're watching this.
Mm-hmm.
So we're putting some changes through in our life, which is exciting, but also a little scary. But we want to introduce the new era, the new podcast. So we've kind of been talking about this for a while, that we wanted to kind of pivot and talk about different topics, but kind of niche down into what we really want to focus on. And so the new podcast is going to be called Endure to the End. Previously, it was Welcome to the Zoo, but we're excited about the direction we're going. So
a big part of the reason why we wanted to pivot, like Caitlin said, is we want to niche down. And the niche that we're niching down on primarily is our faith. We're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And one of the things that Caitlin and I have talked about a lot in the time that we took a break is how much we've really enjoyed like the gospel conversations that we've been able to have. And we consistently have conversations like that in our everyday life. And we think that it would just be fun to put goodness out there, and we're not ashamed of our faith. We're not ashamed of our faith, and we enjoy talking about it. All the ins and outs. You know, Caitlin and I think that between her and I, we have a pretty broad spectrum as it relates to the texture of our testimonies. And we both have pretty interesting stories in relation to how those testimonies became strengthened over our lives, especially Caitlin. Caitlin has a really cool story that I don't know how much she shared about in the past, but her story could be literally like a book. It's pretty cool. But we are firm believers in Jesus Christ, of his atonement, and we believe in the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. We believe in, all those things that come along with that.
yeah, and we want to be just kind of a happy corner of podcasting, of the internet. Like you said, uplifting. I think right now there's a lot of people throughout the world that are going through really hard things. And not only are we hearing constant, things in the news about tragic events, but something that has helped us through the hard times, especially this year, I feel like we've been punched down a couple of times. And I mean, just picking ourselves up and having a focus on, like Josh said, on Jesus Christ and his atonement and what builds us up and what keeps us going. And we want to just share the journey with you guys, because it's always a journey, right? And Endure to the End, I think, is just going to encapsulate how we feel about life, that there's really no finish line. And something that we both have really gotten into and shared recently is running. And so we're not going to make this entire podcast about running, but we're definitely going to weave running throughout the podcast as well too, because that's been something that has helped our marriage and our life, not only our faith. And so, I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that maybe won't love the pivot, but we're still going to talk about our relationship, our marriage, things that we go through. But the over encapsulating, I guess, topics are going to be the gospel.
Yeah, the gospel will be the main focal point, which will draw everything back to. But Caitlin's right. Running has become something that's become a very meaningful part of our relationship. And for me, it's a little odd because I've always hated running. I've always had a weird relationship with running. And so this past year, Caitlin and I have been training. We've been running, and we've gotten to the point where we run roughly 20 miles a week, which isn't crazy. It's not crazy, but Caitlin and I are crazy, and we have some crazy goals. This is probably this is one of those moments where Caitlin's like kind of putting up with me, but I really wanted to. I got it in my head that I want to run ultra marathons, and Caitlin wants to join me on that. So right now we're planning on training for. We're not planning. We are training. We are training for a 50K run. It's called the Canyons. It's the Canyons 50K endurance run, and it's in California. And it's this next April, which is pretty nuts. It's like over 30 miles, and it's a trail run. So, but yeah, I feel like, why don't you share, Caitlin, like your thoughts on why that happened and whether or not you feel like we were kind of guided to doing that?
Yeah, I think we have felt guided to continue the podcast. We've felt guided to run. There's been a lot of things that I feel like God has been pushing us to do, and we've been trying to follow those promptings. So yeah, because this summer, which I'm sure we'll talk about in other episodes, a lot happened. We moved to Florida and Tennessee. We were kind of all over the place, and it was an adventure, but it was crazy. And we weren't able to record the podcast this summer, but I think it was good for us to take a little bit of a break and really focus on the path that we want to take and the direction that we're going. So we definitely feel prompted to take this direction, and just grateful for all the listeners and all the supporters that we've had thus far throughout this, trying to figure it out, and we're really excited for the future. We have a lot of really cool ideas. And when it comes to running, I think it's been a really cool journey for me because I've liked running, which honestly is shocking to me even to say, because I really didn't used to like running. But I would say in the last, I don't even know how many years it's been since I started running. It's been a while, on and off. I've done some races, and I always have kind of come back to wanting to do it again because I really felt like it pushed me to the limit that I guess didn't know I could tap into. And so I kind of got addicted to doing half marathons, which that's the only marathon I've ever done. And so Josh and I have talked about doing a full marathon as well. And then now we're going to be training for an ultra, which is so crazy. But I am surprised, honestly, that I came to that decision because it's really scary, and I've told Josh this before, but I feel like I'm a really committed person. I try to be, and I didn't want to make that decision lightly. And so it has been really cool for us to have something in common, though, and something to work towards. And I know that's going to be the case with the podcast, but also with this run. And yeah, we felt prompted to do that. And it was crazy. We went to Plunge, the place that we went to or have gone to, the sauna and cold plunge place. And so when we were there, we met a girl who has ran 21 ultras, I think she said, right? Mm-hmm. So it was just crazy, the timing of it, because I was going back and forth if I wanted to take the leap of faith and sign up for this race with Josh. And so we met her, and she was like, you guys need to sign up tonight. You guys need to sign up tonight. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I think she thought it was so cool that we do it together. And I think that she kind of talked about that, ultras really have pushed her to her limit. And she kind of was talking about how you meet yourself in a place that you never knew you could go, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it was just very motivating to talk to her. And it gave me a little bit more peace of mind when she said that sometimes half marathons and full marathons, this might be shocking to people, but can be harder on your body than an ultra, just because of the trail is a little bit softer, I believe is what she was kind of saying, the cushion and pavement versus, that. And then a lot of the times with marathons, people are trying to hit certain paces. They're not stopping very often. And with ultras, like, you can kind of take your time and you can stop more. So I do think it'll be cooler to take you guys on this journey with the podcast and our training, because it is going to be, a good amount of time before we run it. But yeah, I mean, I think we both in that moment when we were talking to her at Plunge, we were like, you know what, maybe this is a sign. So we've had a lot of signs lately. So
yeah, we have had a lot of signs, and we've had a lot of bonding moments on our runs, especially our long runs, where sometimes Caitlin and I don't begin the run on the same page, and then we just something happens where we realize that we really are supposed to be doing this together, and it's just one of those things where it's been super interesting. And so the way that we want to tie this into the podcast and into the gospel, there's two ways. Number one is it's about rhythm, finding our rhythm within our life. And for me and for Caitlin, something that's very important for our marriage and what enables us to do all the crazy things that we do when it comes to building businesses, raising kids, traveling cross country, and dealing with all the ups and especially the downs when things don't work out the way we want to, is us connecting with one another and making sure that we stay connected with one another. Like, that's something that Caitlin and I feel like I've always tried to prioritize in our marriage, is that no matter what happens, we always do our best to stay connected to one another and we stay connected to God. And I feel like that's really enabled us to endure everything, every season of our marriage, which we've been married for 5 years. I'm not saying that we've been married for 20. Sometimes it feels like that.
There's a lot
for all
that's
the good
happened.
reasons, right?
Yeah.
Because of a lot that's happened. But there's this principle in training that I've gotten really excited to share with you guys. And I want to start with a scripture. It's a scripture from Doctrine and Covenants. It's Doctrine and Covenants 88, verse 47. It says, "Behold, all things are created and made to bear record of me, both things which are temporal and things which are spiritual." The reason why this is important is because it's important to recognize that all things that have been created bear testimony of Christ, his gospel, and of our Heavenly Father, and of their plan for us, and of our eternal destiny to live with them again. And it's written into our very bodies how this is true. All things testify of Christ. And one of the cool things that you learn about once you start getting into endurance and trying to train that is that there's a principle called 80-20. There's a zone of your heart rate. It's called zone 2. And that's where you want to spend about 80% of the time doing your training. And what zone 2 feels like, it feels like you're right at the very edge of not being able to talk, or like you can still breathe through your nose and have a conversation, but you can feel that you're giving effort. It's not super uncomfortable, but on a scale of 1 to 10, it's probably like a 3 out of 10 effort-wise. So it's something that you feel like you can do for hours, but it's not walking and it's definitely not sitting down. It's effort, but it's sustainable. And the thing that I find the most interesting about this is that this is the physiological setting in which your body, when you compound that over time, it will literally change the structure of your heart. Literally, it changes the structure of your heart so that you can bear those burdens easier. And those burdens, they're not heavy burdens, but it becomes easier for you. Like it's like your heart is an engine and the sides of the engine grows. Also, the veins in your legs, if you're doing it through running, they will change. Like the plumbing, where like your veins gets oxygen to your muscles, you grow new ones. And so it completely changes your body. And the thing that I think is the most beautiful about it is that two things. Number one, it's just hard enough that it requires effort, but it's not hard enough that you can't connect with somebody. It seems almost like it's designed specifically for you to do it with another person where you can converse with each other for hours. And so Caitlin admittedly is faster than me, but oftentimes we'll just walk it or we'll just run next to each other and talk for the duration of our long runs. And it's so nice to be able to have those moments where we have probably like 4 or 5 hours a week where we're training, and 80% of the time we're able to just talk with each other while we're doing it. And is it always that simple? No. Sometimes one of us wants to go a little bit faster than the other, and that's okay. The other thing that's interesting about it is that doing Zone 2 in and of itself is not enough.
Quick break to tell you about today's sponsor, ZoonX Pest Control. ZoonX is a family-run business that started back in 2021 in Seattle, and today we proudly serve both the Seattle area and Salt Lake City area. We help people deal with things nobody wants living in their home: rats and mice, ants, wasps, and any other pests that tend to show up when you least expect them. But honestly, most of our customers aren't dealing with a massive infestation. They're on a general pest prevention program because they want peace of mind, knowing that whether it's a serious rodent issue or something simple, they're covered. If that sounds like you, we'd love to help. You can call us at 801-935-8846. That's 801-935-8846. That number works for both Utah and Seattle. And if you mention this podcast, you'll get $100 off your very first service. That's ZoonX Pest Control, protection, prevention, and peace of mind.
It's important for us to push ourselves. That last 20% of the time, you are supposed to send it. You are supposed to push it. You're trying to get faster, and so you run faster, and you try to hold that time as long as you can for that duration, and it expands you. But the scriptures and Paul taught that it's not requisite for us to run faster than we're able to. Does that mean that we need to be redlining every single time, every single day throughout life? No, it doesn't. It means that we need to find a pace and a rhythm which is sustainable and allows us to connect with one another, which is really the essence of the gospel, is connecting with one another and connecting with God. And that's sustainable. And then we push it, that last 20%. But the thing that's interesting and is a cherry on top of all of this is that we as Latter-day Saints, we do believe that we are saved by grace. We do not believe that we're saved by works, but we believe that faith without works is dead. And those are two opposite things that a lot of Christian denominations argue about all the time. It's like one end of the spectrum. When the truth is that the gospel of Jesus Christ is full of paradox. It's full of both ends of the spectrum that have to be weighed and measured and accepted fully. Grace and works. Now, can we ever work our way to heaven? Can we ever work our way to salvation, to exaltation? No, we can't. We can't do that. But faith without works is dead. Faith is an action word. It requires us to work. It requires us to, by its very nature, it requires us to lengthen our stride into trust. And that trust requires action. Otherwise, it's not trust. But essentially, the thing that's important about this Zone 2 and where this ties all back together and like the 80-20 principle is that after doing this for a couple of weeks where you build up your mileage, say you're like at 21 miles week 1, 22 miles week 2, 23 miles week 3, week 4, it's extremely important that you cut back on the miles. There's various ranges of how much people say you should cut back on it, but it's very important that you taper and that you cut back on the mileage because your body won't it won't grow the way that it's supposed to without rest and without recognizing that we can't force our way into growth. We can't finish it for us. Christ is the finisher of our faith. And the thing that happens inside of the body when you rest is this thing called supercompensation, where your body literally, when you're giving it the rest that it needs, it strengthens itself beyond what you were asking of it. And so for me, I feel like that's like it's symbolic of grace. At least that's how it feels to me.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a really long rant.
No, I like it. I think, like Josh had said, the price has already been paid through Christ's atonement, and there's nothing that we can do to change that. It's just there, and we either are going to take the opportunity to use that gift we've been given to grow and to change, or we aren't, right? And there always is going to be like effort, right? We have to put in effort to change. And so the grace is always going to be there, though, like you said, and we are just lucky enough to have that. And something that has been really difficult for me is that we worked so hard just recently to run a half marathon, and Josh has been training since February, and I've trained really hard as well. And we've done a lot of runs together, like Josh has just said. And we sadly got really, really sick before the race. And
that's why our voices still sound a little weird.
Yeah. And our kids got sick. It was just kind of a series of unfortunate events. And I bring this up because this feels symbolic to me too, because it was really frustrating to go through all of that training and all of that work. And you feel like you're kind of going up that mountain, right? And I felt like we were at the very top of the mountain and we didn't get to experience the joy of the finish line. And it felt like a failure in the moment, and it felt like we got that ripped away from us. But I just knew deep down when it came race day that we weren't going to be able to do it physically. And it was a good lesson for me to realize that just some things are out of our control and things are going to happen, and obviously family always comes first. But I think with this podcast and the pivot and what we're doing, it's just really symbolic for me to continue to focus on the journey, and the journey that we've embarked on together with running already has been super meaningful and super cool and really hard. There's been hard moments, there's been good moments. We've had really fun runs, difficult runs. We've seen beautiful places. We've ran in beautiful, just been able to see a lot more through running. But that was disappointing. And I can say that we weren't able to do the half marathon that we had planned in Moab. But there's always going to be more races is what I was going to say. And there's always going to be more goals. And you can feel redemption in different ways, right? But I want to focus on the journey and us calling it endure to the end, because we always have to be picking ourselves up, We're always going to be putting in that effort to change, to grow. And Josh and I fully believe that that's the reason why we're here on earth, is to become who we're supposed to become through effort. And God is leading our path, but we have to be the one to study, right? And that this is also going to be a cool place for us to study and to discuss gospel topics and to grow as a couple, just as individuals. And who doesn't need that, right? And I think that's what's so beautiful about the journey. And we're excited to share our journey with you guys, but also take you along to where you can kind of fit into that journey and see kind of where you're headed. And we can kind of all grow with each other on the journey, if that makes sense. And I think the journey is always going to be more meaningful than the finish line. because yes, endure to the end, right? Like someday there's going to be an end. We don't know when that is, but it's like we still don't even really believe in an end because we believe that there's going to be another life after this. And so it's almost like we're preparing for that next life. And what we do now is going to propel us into what we are going to be later on, right? Josh, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think that what you said is the key, that the journey for us has definitely been the most important part. Because honestly, the ending, sometimes it really feels like in our life in particular, and this isn't to complain, but it does feel like that race at the end has kind of been ripped away from us a couple of times in a couple of different areas of our lives.
Yeah.
You know, and it can be very easy to, I don't know, just be so disappointed that you're like, what's the point?
Like it was depressing.
Yeah, like what's the point of all this? But then you take a step back and you realize, like I wouldn't trade anything. I wouldn't, like, there's nothing that I would trade spaces with, like, for the experience that we had to do this together because of how close I feel like it brought us. And honestly, there is something special about being with your partner and pushing yourself to the point where each one of you takes turns struggling and you help each other through that. Mm-hmm. Because there have been moments where I've realized I need to be a little bit softer in how I talk to Caitlin, you know, or I like in those specific moments, like the just push forward doesn't always work for everybody.
Put your shoulder to the wheel.
Well, it's just that, you know, what you might need in that moment is different than what I might need in that moment. And what I might need in that moment is not the same as what you might need. But honestly, if there's anything that I need, it's to learn how to help you in those moments, even if it requires more patience than I want to, you know, like more patience from either one of us than we want to initially give in those moments. But that's where we can really practice Christ-like attributes, you know, because those are moments where you and I, we really do need help from each other. We really do need understanding and patience from each other. And something that I think that you and I have really realized is that people show you who they are when they're uncomfortable, when they're tired, when they're hurting. And people show you how they are or who they are when they how they decide to respond to somebody that way also shows where that person is in that moment. Like if I can't be patient.
Yeah, how you show up.
Yeah, how I show up for you says a lot about where I'm at currently. And so there's always room to work on. And so I just think it's a fun thing to get to practice that in a way that's very visceral and very real.
Yeah, I agree. I think it takes you to a place of, you know, what am I going to do in this hard moment? And running can really take you to a crazy place of like problem solving and, like you said, showing up for your partner, especially if you're doing runs together. So there's a lot of parallels. There's a lot of things that we're excited to talk about. And we're going to keep the episodes a little bit shorter so they're more, I guess, just easier to digest. So we're going to keep our episodes at 30 minutes. And I think that will be good for us to kind of condense our thoughts, but also, like I said, for the listeners. And yeah, we're just really excited to take you guys along for the journey and for us to grow as individuals, like I said, and our marriage through Christ and really focusing on what matters and what we really believe in is going to make us our best selves. And yeah, there's exciting things to come. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Josh, before we wrap up. But
I would say that this podcast is not going to be about running. The running will be an overarching theme, and we'll keep you up to date on what's happening in our running career. Like, I would say it'll maybe account for 20 to 25% of the podcast, but the rest of it will be about our rhythm and how we try or what we aspire to be like when it comes to enduring as a couple to the end. That'll go over things like what we believe. This will also delve into things like apologetics, LDS apologetics, which I'm really excited to get into. It'll talk about faith, about like just patterns in our lives, like how we balance things or don't balance things. What else will it be about?
Spirituality, you said, and yeah, I mean, I think a little bit of, marriage and how we show up as parents, family, all the things are going to be tied back to the gospel, but we're still going to share, our day-to-day
Yeah.
life and things that are going on. And we do plan on still having guests on the podcast. I think as of right now, we're going to focus a little bit more on the foundation and getting this new podcast up and going. But yeah, we feel really good about it, and there are a lot of LDS people in this area, and there's a lot of people that we would love to chat with and talk to. And yeah, and I want to be more active too on social media, and we can even, interact with our listeners and get ideas of what, we want to talk about in the future as well. So there's a lot of things that we're going to do, but we're definitely, like we said, we're niching down. So, yep.
Okay. Well, we'll see you guys next time.
Okay. Sounds good.